Hi, it's been a while, but this will be a mission like no other uh, to the deep purple of Eve, and there will be no smoke on the water. So I had to put this whole craft into the wide open because it was too big to fit inside the fairing, and this cost some delta V to drag, but somehow it works out. On the other hand, it just barely has enough delta V to make into orbit if flown perfectly. And this is a recurring theme in this ship that there are not very big margins of error allowed, otherwise the mission fails. On the other hand, everything went perfectly. This is the separation of the asset booster. So went perfectly. Uh, Somehow I managed to do everything on the first try, and I, I'm quite happy with that. Okay, I had to practice each part before that, so I knew what I was doing. I knew where the weak parts or timings in the mission phases are. So this is the injection burn, full burn, and I got a closer encounter I hoped for. Somehow, uh, very close to Eve. Now, after I entered the sphere of influence of Eve, I made a lot of maneuver nodes trying to change the trajectory. And what I was trying to achieve is to have a trajectory that has an ascending or descending node very close to the apoapsis. However, in the stock game, this is very hard to do if you lack an equatorial plane moon, because you can set the moon as a target and then you can use the node markers for that. But in this case, I cannot do that. And because I didn't have much extra fuel in this ship, I had to do it correctly on the first try. And for that, I actually had to increase the inclination further than it was. And all that just by eyeballing it, and that is really hard. And even after that, I had to use the carbon engineer to find the node uh, where I needed to burn. Otherwise, I could have done a two burn inclination change by eyeballing it. I usually do it like that. But the thing is, again, because of the tight fuel constraints, I couldn't do that. It was impossible that way. So I had to make a single, very efficient burn to have equatorial orbit. All this because, of course, leaving Eve would require me to be in an equatorial orbit. At least it's the easiest to it from that. So here's the node I came up with after a conventional uh, capture. No way to do an arrow capture because of the sticking out parts of the ship, and it's too heavy without a heat shield to survive that. So I had to do everything conventional, like chemical boosters and stuff like that. So this is the inclination or plane change, which fixed the correct inclination with just 20 meters per second of delta V spent, and that was really nice. And after that, I need to do the circularization, which is at this point is quite routine. I had to take into account that when I detach the cruise stage, it will just push me a little bit, so one side of the orbit was lower than the other, and the detachment pushed it back to the almost perfect circle around 110 kilometers. I need to have that because this is a landing done in two parts, and I wanted to land the two parts as close together as possible. And for that, I had to rely on the previously practiced landing approaches, which were tried already. So I couldn't deviate from that plan. So this was the separation of the Eve ascent vehicle. It lands first, and it lands in an ocean. I managed to shrink it as good as I could by omitting the cabin. So the four carbals are riding in the open and common seats and it is quite stable. It looks like a bomb. It's quite stable during re-entry, but it has a point around 50 kilometers where I had to turn on the engines so that it doesn't flip over. But aside from that, it's really stable, so there are no problems with that. So it could have landed on land too, but as I wanted to land in the ocean anyway, this was the logical thing to do. The second part is this floating sea platform. What is left behind is the return vehicle. It's a floating sea platform with a small plane to travel to the ascent stage. I realized that by waiting some time to make the landing area uh, in the in daytime, I put the burn area in the nighttime, so I couldn't line up my burn for a precise landing. So I had to wait a little bit more until it was visible, so I could see the landmark where I know how to burn or when to burn for precise landing. And I managed to land around 17 kilometers from the ascent stage, so it was quite okay. I have to use the engines because the plane is not completely shielded, so otherwise it burns up. So this plane is with a stock propeller for infinite delta V. And this is my first tries in building that. And it took quite a lot of tries, and it's very ugly, so there are better stock propellers than this. What's under a plane is a small submarine, well, Bathysphere, because there are no engines that can take me deeper or make me rise in this kind of atmosphere and high pressure environment. So it has to work with hydrostatics. And those black ore tanks are full of ore, so they are heavy and they are able to make this small pod sink. And my goal here was to reach the bottom of the ocean, or at least one of the oceans on Eve, because this is what I haven't done here. I sent a submarine to Leyte, and of course I had submarines on Caribbean, but I have never done it on Eve. So without edges, this is the best I could do because no jets work here and rockets are not usable. And those air brakes are really important for controlling speed, both up and down. They are useful. So the bottom cupola module is done intentionally so that the carbon inside, in this case Valentina, can touch the sea bottom. This was one of my goals around, what was it, 1500 meters depth, which is quite nice. And after that, detaching these ore tanks makes the pod light enough to float to the surface again. And that cone or funnel there in the floating platform makes it possible to automatically dock to the platform. Now, there was just a small time spent on transferring the cables to the plane. One more place is free, but I couldn't make it differently because of the cabin modules. And I need one pilot, so it's a 5-person craft. Now the launch is like you have to initiate a rotation with trim, and then detach that part in the nose, and then it will start to rotate, and it becomes a separate entity, and it's captured inside that nose part, and that is what will just make the plane have infinite delta V, because it will rotate forever, and this propeller provides a constant thrust. There's one problem with this, however. During the design, I realized that it mustn't be designed for maximum thrust, because if you test it in a stand on the launch pad maybe, or the runway, and if you set up the propeller blades so that they are providing maximum thrust at zero speed, they will provide very little thrust when the plane is moving. So the angles have to be a little bit smaller that the whole thing rotates faster, and then there will be enough thrust at higher speeds that the plane can still fly. So it basically it's an optimum. You have to shoot for optimum speed, not maximum thrust at zero speed. Otherwise, it will not work. And nobody explains that. And actually, it was not really simple to uh, find out. And here's the landing. I messed it up because I overshot the target, and I had to turn back. And I crashed. I knew I will crash the propeller anyway because there's no way to land with this on sea. It can land on land. Land on land. Anyway, so no way to make a splashdown with this that the propeller survives. And I was a little bit farther than I wanted to be, around 180 meters instead of less than 100 I wanted to. And I had to swim 4 cables, and this took a lot of time to do. So even with time acceleration, you cannot use time acceleration in this case somehow because the whole camera started to shake. Yeah, I fell down with this. It was Jeb, I think, first time. Yeah. Anyway, otherwise, it was almost perfect. And CVing, it's really annoying. So the craft, the plane is capable of circling Eve if necessary, or even carbine. I didn't try it on Duna. I tried it to go up to 10,000 meters on Eve, and it could still fly higher, but I didn't test it further because it's very slow. So teaching the landing parts, and after that the tanks have to control the speed or the thrust to not fly too fast. And there was a flip here. I lost around 200 meters per second delta V to that, but still made it into orbit. And this was the other kind of accident I made during the mission, but it was still recoverable, so there was no problem with that. And after that, it's just the usual rendezvous. Nothing strange in that, except that I had to EVA the 4 cables to separate cabins because there is no way to dock this. Yeah, there was not much fuel remaining on that one. And after I made the burn, actually when I was really close to carbon, I realized that I didn't switch the control from here position in this craft. Yeah, this is waiting for the launch window. This is the only part which has a lot of delta V, so maybe I should have waited for that, but that is the way it was calculated, so I didn't want to change it in the middle of the mission. So these pods are angled, so the control was angled from the thrust vector, and I don't know how I made it back to carbon this way, but somehow it worked out. I should have used the control from here on the docking port on the nose or top of the craft. And strange enough, later this strange oscillation, which is prevalent in the early phase of the mission on this module, on this part of the craft, is not there. It works completely fine. I don't know why it was happening at the beginning of the mission. And this is finally the arrival of our heroes. They arrive back home safely. Thanks for watching. Bye.